Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison LaGrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. Iran's atomic energy chief visits Moscow for nuclear talks just days after the UN Security Council reviews to lift sanctions, with Europe accusing Tehran of breaching the 2015 nuclear deal. NATO envoys gather for urgent talks after Estonia accused 3 Russian fighter jets of violating its airspace. The 12-minute incursion triggered a scramble of NATO jets and sharp warnings of provocation. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. places the Philippines on full disaster alert as Super Typhoon Ragasa tears into the north, triggering storm surges and warnings across East and Southeast Asia. Nepal's interim government orders an inquiry into the violence during the anti-corruption protest that killed 74 and toppled Prime Minister KP Sharma Ali. The Gen Z-led uprising was the country's deadliest unrest in decades. And Sweden's right-wing coalition pledges an $8.5 billion spending surge in its 2026 budget, touting world-class finances. Officials say strong reserves let Stockholm spur growth while Europe struggles with ballooning debt. Hello and welcome. We begin with updates on US President Donald Trump's executive order that has added a $100,000 fee for H-1B applicants. This has now come into effect. On Friday, when US President Trump signed the order introducing the fee, it sparked some confusion and concern among visa holders, especially Indians who make up over 70% of the total H-1B holders. Now, at the time, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick indicated that the fee might be charged annually, adding that details were still being considered. The Trump administration said that the high fee is aimed at ensuring that people being brought into the US are actually very highly skilled and do not replace American workers.
The country would rather not have to pay $100,000, but they'd rather, how do you do that? You hire Americans. So there's an incentive to hire American, but there may be instances where it's better off doing it through expertise or whatever it may be. But they're both unbelievable, whether it's a gold card or anything else that we talked about today.
You're very close to the technology CEOs. Are they concerned about that?
I think they're going to be very happy. Everyone's going to be happy. And we're going to be able to keep people in our country that are going to be very productive people.
What this proclamation will do is raise the fee that companies pay to sponsor H-1B applicants to $100,000. This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually very highly skilled and that they're not replaceable by American workers. So it'll protect American workers, but ensure that companies have a pathway to hire truly extraordinary people and bring them to the United States to work.
After the announcement, social media videos showed scenes of confusion and fear. This video from a packed Emirates flight at the San Francisco International Airport went viral. The aircraft had completed boarding and was ready for takeoff to India when passengers began receiving news of the visa changes. Many of those on board with the H-1B visas then pleaded to get off the plane. Later, White House officials swung into action to give some clarity. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt put out 3 points. First, the $100,000 fee is not annual, it is a one-time fee. Second, current H-1B visa holders outside the US would not be charged the fee when re-entering. And third, the fee does not apply to anyone currently with a visa or anyone seeking a renewal. Fourth, it only applies to future applicants in the February 2026 lottery who are currently outside the United States. A White House fact sheet stated that the government may allow an H-1B visa application without the $100,000 fee if in national interest. The new fee is a massive jump from the previous $2,000 to $5,000 range, sparking concerns over its impacts on startups, small business, and IT professionals in both America and abroad. Now, this clarification was being highly anticipated by Indians and did calm nerves in the tech circles. Now, this is because Indians make up the majority of the H-1B visa holders. Out of around 400,000 H-1B recipients in 2024, around 71% were Indians. The number stood at over 72 in 2023 and at 77% in 2022. The government of India said the measure is likely to have humanitarian consequences by way of disruption caused for families. The Indian government expressed hope that these disruptions can be addressed suitably by the US authorities. India said that full implications of the measures are being studied by industries. And according to US immigration data, for the 2025 fiscal, Amazon topped the list of H-1B approvals. The top 10 beneficiaries include TCS, followed by Microsoft Corp, Meta, Apple, Google. Infosys is a part of the top 20. And Indian equity markets opened on a cautious note this morning, with IT industry stocks tumbling after Trump's Friday announcement. For Indian IT firms, the US is the biggest market to replace their talent, and the move will now considerably narrow the cost advantage of sending Indian employees overseas compared to hiring locally. Will this plan help the Trump administration achieve its intended effect, or will the American innovation ecosystem suffer collateral damage? Will American companies be forced to consider shifting operations overseas? And how far-reaching would the impact be for Indian IT firms? All of these questions remain. The answers will only trickle in with time. And back in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has rolled out a sweeping overhaul of the country's goods and services tax. His government is calling it a festival of savings, timed with the start of Navratri and running through the festive season until Diwali and beyond. The move, they say, will simplify taxes, cut costs for households, and boost growth in the world's fourth largest economy. Rolling out the new GST reforms, Prime Minister Modi said to achieve the goal of a developed India, the country must follow the path of self-reliance. Listen in.
विकसित भारत के लक्ष्य तक पहुंचने के लिए हमें आत्मनिर्भरता के रास्ते पर चलना ही होगा और भारत को आत्मनिर्भर बनाने का बहुत बड़ा दायित्व हमारे एमएसएमईज यानी हमारे लघु, मध्यम और कुटीर उद्योगों पर भी है, जो देश के लोगों की जरूरत का है, जो हम देश में ही बना सकते हैं, वो हमें देश में ही बनाना चाहिए। साथियों, जीएसटी की दरें कम होने से नियम और प्रक्रियाएं और आसान बनने से हमारे एमएसएमईज, हमारे लघु उद्योगों को, कुटीर उद्योगों को बहुत फायदा होगा।
Dubbed the GST 2.0, the changes merge four slabs into two main categories, 5% and 18%, with very essential goods exempted, and a 40% sin tax on products like alcohol, tobacco, and online betting. So what's changing for consumers, and how will it impact households and businesses? Let's break it down. The GST Council, chaired by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, has collapsed the four earlier slabs into 3 effective buckets. 0% for essentials such as groceries and basic edibles, 5% for mass consumption goods and services such as FMCGs, 18% for most other goods and services, and a 40% sin tax on luxury and harmful items. Consumers will feel the impact most directly at supermarkets and kitchens. On chapati, cottage cheese, milk and pizza bread, the GST has been reduced to 0, making these consumables significantly cheaper. Soap, shampoos, toothpaste, shaving cream, detergents and hair oil have been put under a 5% GST slab from the earlier 12 or 18% slab. Healthcare and education have been prioritized for relief, and the GST has been reduced to 0 on health and life insurance premiums. It's down to 5% on life-saving drugs, medical devices, oxygen, and diagnostic kits. Next comes the education sector. The GST has been reduced to 0 on pencils, crayons, notebooks, sharpeners, globe maps, and charts. And automobiles and electronics, key drivers of demand, see rationalization too. The GST on electric vehicles is down to 5%, on 18% on small cars and two-wheelers and auto parts, making it cost-effective for Indians aiming to upgrade or buy their first vehicle this festive season. Next comes electronics and appliances. Televisions, washing machines, refrigerators, air conditioners and dishwashers will also get cheaper as GST goes down from 28 to 18% on these items. Builders and service providers are also big beneficiaries. The GST on cement is down from 28 to 18%, making construction of new infrastructure, whether civil or public, significantly cheaper. In terms of services, gyms, spas, salons, yoga centers will now see 5% GST, while budget hotels and economy airfares are also expected to see a dip due to reduced GST rate of 5% on them starting from today. From groceries to gadgets, cars to classrooms, GST 2.0 promises to put more money into people's pockets through savings. The government calls it a savings festival. But the real question, will lower tax rates actually cool inflation and spur demand in this festive season? And turning now to the Philippines, where anger over a massive corruption scandal has spilled dramatically onto the streets of the capital, Manila. On Sunday, what began as one of the Philippines' largest anti-corruption rallies in recent years descended into chaos outside the presidential palace. Masked protesters slammed steel barricades. There were rocks flying toward police shields, and tires were seen burning on the streets of Manila. Many of the masked demonstrators carried not only the Philippine flag, but also banners from Japanese manga One Piece, a striking echo of the anime imagery used in recent protests across Indonesia, and a reminder of how young protesters are blending pop culture with political defiance. Police unleashed water cannons and flashbangs, and protesters hurled rocks, makeshift barricades, and even Molotov cocktails. Security forces locked down the presidential palace as plumes of black smoke rose from burning cargo trucks that were used as barricades. The clashes left nearly 100 officers injured, and dozens of protesters were led away in handcuffs. Authorities later confirmed that more than 200 arrests, including 88 minors, was among them, and one was a boy who was just 12 years old. Elsewhere in Manila, the larger demonstrations were peaceful. Tens of thousands marched with placards reading, "Stop flooding us with corruption," and calls to hold people in power accountable. Church leaders, students, flood survivors, all rallied against an alleged scandal over bogus flood control projects.
I feel bad that we wallow in poverty. We lose our homes, our lives, and our future, while they rake in a big fortune from our taxes that pay for their luxury cars, foreign trips, and bigger corporate transactions.
The scandal has already toppled the leaders of both houses of Congress, including President Marcos Jr.'s own cousin, Martin Romualdez, who until last week served as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has backed the anti-corruption protests while urging Filipinos to remain peaceful during the demonstrations. The Department of Finance has estimated the Philippine economy lost up to 118.5 billion pesos, or $2 billion from 2023 to 2025 due to corruption in flood control projects. Greenpeace has suggested the number is actually closer to $18 billion. Now that number hits especially hard as Filipinos brace for the impact of yet another super typhoon, which made landfall in Karoline earlier today. The Philippines is battered by up to 20 storms a year. Effective flood defenses mean that corruption isn't just about lost money, it's about lives washed away. Police say they are still sorting through who was a part of the peaceful marches and who joined the masked clashes. But the imagery, young Filipinos masked, waving anime flags against water cannons, has already become the symbol of this turbulent weekend. As night fell, the rallies thinned. Smouldering tires and smashed windows marked the path near the palace. The Marcos government has promised deeper investigations, both into the corruption scandal as well as Sunday's violence. But for many Filipinos still living under the threat of floods and promises of rehabilitation, the question remains whether this anger will translate into reform or not. A North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, has signaled that he could be open to talks with the United States. Now, he said this is possible only if Washington drops its demand that North Korea give up all of its nuclear weapons. In a speech to the Supreme People's Assembly, North Korea's rubber-stamped parliament, Kim said he still had fond memories of meeting the US President Donald Trump. The two leaders met thrice during Trump's previous term as the US president. Those summits ultimately failed after Washington pushed Pyongyang to dismantle its nuclear program. Since then, Kim has strengthened ties with Russia and China while continuing to expand the North Korean nuclear arsenal. In his latest speech, Kim said there was no reason for Pyongyang not to sit down with the United States. He demanded that Washington abandon its absurd obsession with denuclearizing them and instead accept North Korea as a nuclear power while pursuing genuine peaceful coexistence. Now, despite this conciliatory tone toward the United States, Kim made it clear Pyongyang will never give up nuclear weapons, describing the arsenal as a matter of survival. Meanwhile, South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has said that he would accept a deal allowing North Korea to retain its weapons but freeze new production. He called such a freeze an interim emergency measure and a realistic alternative to full denuclearization. It is reported that Pyongyang is producing 15 to 20 nuclear weapons annually. Seoul said that decades of UN sanctions and pressure have failed to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions. The new South Korean leader has moved to ease tensions after former President Yoon's hardline stance. Lee is pushing for inter-Korean dialogue through Pyongyang, and this has been rejected by Pyongyang so far. Now, despite the rejection, Seoul nonetheless is aiming for partial progress on denuclearization.
So long as we do not give up on the long-term goal of denuclearization, I believe there are clear benefits to having North Korea stop its nuclear and missile development. The question is whether we persist with fruitless attempts towards the ultimate goal of denuclearization, or we set more realistic goals and achieve some of them.
The diplomatic picture remains complex. While Kim signals a willingness to meet the US, he has rejected engagement with South Korea. In recent years, Pyongyang has destroyed rail links and roads connecting the two countries. At the same time, Pyongyang has sharply escalated the rhetoric against Seoul. The United States is yet to react to Kim's suggestion of a potential bilateral with Pyongyang, but for now, the Korean Peninsula remains a volatile flashpoint where rhetoric and missile tests continue alongside cautious, incremental diplomatic overtures. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I am Richine Garland and you're watching Firstpost. In the next few minutes, I get you the top 40 updates from around the world.